Imran and Zoya Hamza boarded a flight to Istanbul with their children and sister-in-law, chasing memories and sunshine, but within days, one vanished, one was framed, and the rest were caught in a web of smuggling, lies, and betrayal that would destroy their family forever. In the spring of 2019, the Hamza family from Manchester, England, packed their bags for what they believed would be a relaxing, joyful vacation. It was a reward to themselves for surviving a rough year of work, school, and family stress. Imran, Hamza, the father, had been especially eager for a break. A successful businessman known for his import-export company, he had spent most of the past year traveling between Europe and the Middle East. His wife, Zoya, a primary school teacher, longed for quality time with her family, away from daily responsibilities. Their two teenage children, Ayaan and Mariam, were excited by the idea of exploring a new culture. They had never been to Turkey before. Zoya's younger sister Sana, a university student, joined the trip as well, making it a fun family getaway. Istanbul seemed perfect. The historic city offered something for everyone: bustling markets, scenic boat rides, ancient architecture, and vibrant food. Upon arrival, the Hamzas checked into a well-rated boutique hotel in the Fatih district. The city's charm swept them up quickly. Their first few days were filled with trips to the Blue Mosque, Hagia Sophia, and boat rides on the Bosphorus. Ayaan spent his time filming everything on his camera, capturing his version of the trip, while Mariam was fascinated by the fusion of Europe and Asia in one place. It was all going so well. There was laughter, endless photos, and delicious meals. Zoya was thankful for the calm, unaware that beneath the surface, something else had begun to unfold. Imran had insisted on carving out some personal time during the trip to meet a friend from his business days. He described it as nothing serious, just coffee and catching up. Zoya didn't question it, trusting him. But that meeting would become the first step into chaos. 3 days into the trip, Sana reported that she had lost her passport. Panic swept over the group. They searched every bag, retraced their steps, and called the British consulate. The embassy assured them that replacements were possible, but it would take a few days. The family discussed splitting up. Zoya considered staying back with her sister while Imran and the children returned home as scheduled. Imran quickly dismissed the idea. He insisted they stay together and delay their return until Sana's new passport arrived. Zoya was surprised, but accepted the decision. Imran's true motives remained hidden. Unknown to the rest, his meeting hadn't been casual. It involved a man he hadn't seen in years, a man connected to a murky network of dealers in ancient artifacts. Imran had agreed, before even leaving England, to deliver a small package back to the UK. He told himself it was harmless, just a favor for an old friend, and it would help cover the cost of the vacation. He didn't tell Zoya. He didn't tell anyone. The problem was, by the time he met his contact, things had already started going wrong. The package was missing. The friend had gone into hiding. Imran was now entangled in a situation he didn't fully understand. He was being watched, and not just by those who knew him. The vacation, still sunny and beautiful on the surface, had already begun to rot underneath. The cracks were invisible to the rest of the family, but soon, they would all start to see them, and by then, it would be too late. The family decided to make the most of their extended stay while waiting for Sana's replacement passport. Although tension lingered in the air, especially between Imran and Zoya, they tried to keep the atmosphere light for the sake of the children. The following day, they visited the Grand Bazaar, one of Istanbul's most famous landmarks. It was a labyrinth of shops, colors, and crowds, a dazzling experience that overwhelmed the senses. They wandered through the maze like corridors, bartering for trinkets and admiring handmade rugs, spices, and antiques. It was loud, crowded, and chaotic, but the kids loved it. Amid the sensory overload, they didn't notice how long they had been walking or how separated they had become. Then it happened. Ayaan was gone. Just like that. Zoya realized it first when she turned around and saw only Mariam. Panic hit like a tidal wave. They called his name, checked nearby stalls, and alerted security. For 10 agonizing minutes, there was no sign of the boy. Time seemed to freeze. Just as Imran was about to call the police, a local shopkeeper approached them, saying a crying boy had been found sitting alone near a carpet vendor. They rushed there and found Ayaan, shaken and speechless, clutching his camera, but unable to explain where he had been or what had happened. The incident left the whole family rattled. That night, the mood shifted entirely. Back at the hotel, Zoya checked the camera to see if it had captured anything. Most of the footage was normal market stalls, tourist shots, but there was a short clip of a dark alley, shaky and unfocused, as though it had been filmed in a hurry. Ayaan said he didn't remember taking it. That frightened Zoya more than anything. She pressed Imran to speak to hotel security or even the police, but he hesitated. He said Ayaan was safe now, and that was all that mattered. Zoya noticed something else was wrong. Imran was acting more nervous. His phone rang constantly, mostly from unknown numbers. Each time it did, he left the room to answer, saying it was business. He had always been discreet, but this was different. That night, while Imran was out taking one of his mysterious calls, Zoya opened his laptop. She found emails in Turkish, strings of numbers and attachments that made no sense to her, and a name that came up more than once: Yusuf. There were also encrypted folders labeled with dates, one of which matched the day they arrived in Istanbul. Before she could read more, Imran returned. She closed the laptop and pretended nothing had happened, but the trust had begun to erode. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something dangerous, something that now involved them all. Her suspicions were confirmed the next morning when Turkish police knocked on the hotel door. They asked to speak with Imran. He was seen on security footage near a location under investigation for illegal artifact trafficking. Though not arrested, he was taken in for questioning. He returned hours later, claiming it was a misunderstanding, but the damage was done. The story was out now, and it wasn't one they could easily escape. The family's vacation was no longer just stressful, it was slipping into something far darker, and none of them were prepared for what came next. Imran sat in silence for hours after returning from the police station. He looked drained, pale, and older than he had the day before. The family didn't speak much that evening. The tension in the hotel room was unbearable. Zoya couldn't wait any longer. She demanded the truth. What had he done? Why were the police involved? Slowly, with his voice low and empty, Imran began to confess. Years ago, during a business trip, he had been introduced to a group of men dealing in rare artifacts, coins, statues, and other valuable antiquities that had been smuggled from conflict zones. He never intended to get involved, but when one of them offered him a large sum to simply transport a sealed envelope back to the UK, he agreed. It was quick money, and he believed it would never come back to haunt him. Now, years later, that same contact, Yusuf, had reached out again. Imran claimed he felt pressured to accept The man hinted at knowing details of his business and past that could destroy him. The Istanbul meeting was never about coffee. Yusuf had offered another deal. This time it involved a small ancient artifact, something Imran would only need to carry home, supposedly hidden inside luggage. It sounded simple, but when Imran arrived, Yusuf was missing. His phone was disconnected, his apartment empty. Imran tried to back out, but he was already being followed. He sensed it in the street, in the bazaar, even around the hotel. Then the police came, and he realized the situation was far worse than he had thought. Zoya was stunned. Not only had he put himself in danger, but the entire family as well. She felt betrayed and terrified. She wanted to go to the embassy immediately, but Imran insisted they stay calm. Before any plans could be made, another shock hit them. When they returned to the hotel room the next day, after a short walk, the door was ajar. Inside, the room was a mess. Luggage had been opened and searched. Clothes were scattered, electronics unplugged, drawers emptied. Nothing seemed to be stolen, but something had clearly been left behind. Zoya noticed Sana's backpack in the bathroom. It looked untouched from the outside, but when she opened it, her heart dropped. Wrapped in a cloth towel was a small golden statue. It was old, intricately carved, and unmistakably valuable. None of them had seen it before. It hadn't been there the day before. Someone had planted it. Panic turned to dread. This wasn't just surveillance or intimidation anymore. It was a setup. Imran recognized the artifact from one of Yusuf's messages. It was part of a set looted from a museum in Syria. Possessing it alone was a major crime. They were being framed, or worse, being used. Zoya was furious. She blamed Imran entirely, but there was no time to argue. They needed help. As they packed their things, trying to hide the statue and prepare to speak with authorities, a knock came at the door. A quiet, firm knock. Their nightmare wasn't over. It had just deepened. The knock at the hotel room door was quiet but deliberate, sending a wave of dread through everyone inside. Zoya stood frozen. Imran looked through the peephole and saw two uniformed officers. With no other choice, he opened the door. The police entered calmly but firmly, informing the family that they needed to collect the golden statue immediately. It had been traced through a tip-off, and now the family was officially part of a criminal investigation. The artifact was carefully placed in a secured evidence bag while the family was told they could not leave the city until further notice. Overnight, the family's reality had shifted from stress to survival. Turkish authorities began interrogating Imran more frequently, this time with legal representation. They believed he was a direct link to an international smuggling operation. Zoya, Mariam, Ayan, and Sana were interviewed separately, and hotel staff confirmed that an unidentified man had accessed their room during housekeeping hours. Surveillance footage showed a man entering the hallway, but not clearly entering the room. The investigation grew deeper, and the Hamza name was officially tied to the case in media reports, especially after leaked information suggested Imran had past connections to the black market. Then Sana vanished. She had left the hotel that morning to get coffee from a nearby cafe. Hours passed, and she didn't return. Her phone was unreachable. Zoya reported her missing, and panic erupted again. That night, the police received a tip about a woman matching Sana's description being seen near an abandoned warehouse at the edge of the city. Authorities found her hours later tied to a chair, frightened but unharmed. There was no ransom demand, no injuries, just a note left in her pocket with the words, "Stay quiet, or next time, it's worse." It was a clear message. Someone wanted to silence the family, From that point, Turkish police placed the family under hotel arrest. They were not allowed to leave the premises except for questioning or medical emergencies. Ayhan, traumatized by Sana's disappearance and the constant tension, stopped speaking entirely. He refused to eat, rarely slept, and clung to his camera as if it were his only safe connection to the world. Mariam, once lively and curious, withdrew completely. Zoya was slipping into exhaustion, battling anxiety and guilt while trying to stay strong for her children. Eventually, she collapsed from dehydration and was taken to the hospital under guard. Meanwhile, Imran's situation worsened. Authorities found more emails, linking him to multiple exchanges involving stolen artifacts. Even if he hadn't physically transported the statue, his communication with Yusuf and past involvement made him a person of interest. They offered him a choice: cooperate fully and provide details about his contacts, or face full prosecution. Without leniency, Zoya, from her hospital bed, decided that once she returned, she would no longer stand by Imran. She had defended him, believed in him, but now she knew too much. Their lives had changed forever. What was meant to be a joyful trip had become a dangerous trap, and there was no clear way out. Weeks turned into months. The Hamzas remained trapped in Istanbul as the investigation stretched on. Imran's full cooperation with the Turkish authorities had given the prosecutors access to several names, emails, and accounts used by the smuggling network. His confession, while damaging, had helped authorities build a larger case against international traffickers. In return, his sentence was reduced but not avoided. He was sentenced to 6 years in a Turkish prison, with the possibility of early release based on behavior. The trial made headlines in both Turkey and the UK. British news outlets painted Imran as a secret smuggler who risked his entire family for profit. The story became a cautionary tale, shared widely on television, social media, and newspapers. Under bold headlines like "British Family Caught in Istanbul Artifact Scandal" and "The Holiday That Destroyed Them," Zoya and the children were eventually cleared of involvement, but not without weeks of interviews, surveillance, and intense scrutiny. They were permitted to return to the UK, but Sana chose to stay behind temporarily, claiming she needed space and time away from the chaos. The trauma of being kidnapped and nearly used as leverage had scarred her deeply. She couldn't trust easily anymore, not even her own brother-in-law, who she once considered a role model. She moved into a secure residence provided by the authorities and began volunteering with a local organization that helped victims of trafficking. She rarely spoke to Zoya after returning to Istanbul, answering only in short texts and brief phone calls. Back home in Manchester, Zoya tried to rebuild what remained of her life, but everything had changed. She filed for divorce shortly after landing in the UK. She wanted no more connection to Imran or the nightmare he had brought into their lives. The process was quiet but final. She also withdrew Ayhan and Mariam from their schools and enrolled them in private institutions that offered counseling and emotional support. Ayhan still hadn't spoken since the trip. Experts labeled it selective mutism due to trauma. He communicated through gestures and notes, sometimes using his camera to express feelings. Mariam, though stronger on the surface, suffered from panic attacks and nightmares that often left her trembling and unable to sleep. Friends and neighbors who once admired the Hamzas now kept their distance. Whispers followed them in grocery stores and community events. Zoya found herself isolated, burdened by judgment and gossip, though she had done nothing wrong. The emotional weight was too much to carry. She began seeing a therapist weekly, trying to piece together her identity outside of the chaos Imran had created. She focused entirely on her children, determined to protect them from further damage. Imran's prison letters came every few months. She never replied. He wrote about regret, forgiveness, and hope. Zoya kept them in a drawer unopened. The past could not be changed, and the future had to be rebuilt carefully. The trip to Istanbul was supposed to be a simple family holiday, chance to reconnect, relax, and explore a new culture. Instead, it exposed buried secrets, destroyed trust, and tore a once happy family apart. What began with laughter and sightseeing ended in silence, betrayal, and a future forever altered.